Yep. Yep.
Mark, told me one time about something that happened. I believe it was early in your career in
Yes.
crisis intervention with someone who was suicidal, and an interesting and unexpected response from that person's family member.
It was my very first actively suicidal client. I was still in graduate school doing counseling for the Colorado State Employee Assistance Program, and I just had this feeling. It was our third session. I remember it vividly because I had kind of a baseline for her, and she was just off. And so I had to go get my supervisor, who was in a couples counseling session, and said, I need you to come here to assess this individual. We both determined that if she left that day, she would end her life. And so we couldn't allow her to leave. We asked her who we should contact. She gave us the name of a family member, actually her brother. And I wasn't expecting what happened next. We called her brother. My supervisor explained what was happening. And let me start by saying first, this brother wasn't a bad person.
Right.
This brother wasn't, I didn't get any maliciousness off of him, but when he heard that his sister was again experiencing symptoms of suicide, he said, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? She does this every time. We're about to go on vacation, my family and I, and every time we try and leave, every time we try and go do something, she pulls this card. And he was like, and I'm done. Just call 911, call emergency services. And so we had to talk to him about, if we really go down that route, it's going to be much more difficult for everyone involved. We know this is impacting the plans you have for you and your family, but you need to be here. And he understood that. Once he calmed down, once he got to a better headspace, he recognized, yes, my first response was a knee-jerk, emotional one. I need to be there for my sister. But it highlights a good point about the fact that someone struggling with suicide, it might be an ongoing thing that you're supporting them with. And that's something we need to expect, something we need to understand is going to be part of this journey and not just a one-time conversation and then, hey, everything's great again. This is something that's going to be ongoing for us. So tell us a little bit more about what's next.
Well, I really resonated with that story you told when I heard about what Dr. Jeff Gardere is going to be talking to us about.
Yeah.
He has encountered a lot of situations like the one you described. He is a board-certified clinical psychologist, author, media professional, and a professor of behavioral medicine and clinical training at Touro University Medical School and Psychology Graduate School. In his practice, Dr. Gardere has often dealt with patients who have experienced mental health challenges, including suicidal ideations and attempts. He knows, and you may know as well, that it's often difficult to help people. It can be frustrating, especially to family and friends. It can be too easy to label someone who is troubled as troubling. The challenge is to see them not as a pain, but in pain. Today, you'll learn from Dr. Gardere how you can emotionally process those frustrations so you can validate and support others while also taking care of yourself. Please welcome, joining us from New York City, Dr. Jeff Gardere.
Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, everyone out there. And of course, wishing you the best on World Suicide Prevention Day. It's a very special day, but it's a day that many of our families and friends have to live with, of course, in working with their deserving loved ones who go through these areas and these ideas of suicidal ideation, perhaps having a history of suicidal behaviors. And it's a very difficult road for the families and for that family member in need. And so I'm here to address that because, as you heard from Mark, the young man who felt, oh my goodness, my family member acting out, we're ready to take off on this trip and she's doing it yet again. This is something that all of us deal with when we're dealing with someone who is in need, who has mental health challenges. And so I know that as we have that anger, as we have that frustration, which certainly I can validate for you as a clinician and myself, who's had some serious mental health struggles. I've gotten my therapy. I still work on those issues every day. I'm a proud survivor and a victor of mental health issues, but that anxiety is still kicking my butt every day. I've got to tell you that. But, with that being said, it's really important to validate as you go through helping that family member in need or that friend in need, that the frustration turns into anger, that anger turns inevitably into guilt. Why am I feeling this way about this person that I love, about this person who is in need, about this person who is so much worse off than I am? Why am I being selfish? But folks, I'm here to tell you, it's normal. We do it. We're all human beings. Yes, we want to be super beings in what we do in helping our loved ones, but we are just human beings. And look, this is something that is very, very complicated for us. There are so many pressures for us as family members and friends in reaching out, in giving that helping hand, in being there constantly for that person who is in need. For example, we know the emotional arousal that is chronic and constant in caring for that individual who may have an issue. At the times we heard from John, taking care of themselves. And so we step in. But sometimes that emotional arousal has us on fire, body and soul. We just can't seem to tamp it down and be able to get centered and back into ourselves. The time that we spend with that person, the time that's spent on the telephone, that time that's spent in emergency rooms, perhaps putting off vacations completely to care for that loved one, leads to frustration. The sleepless nights, and we know how important sleep can be, the constant worry, not being sure that whatever it is that we've done, the interventions that we've made, is it really enough? Sometimes the cryptic messages that we get, which is really, in many ways, revealing an ambivalence that the person may have about wanting to live or die. But when we hear those messages, we feel that it's some sort of acting out or they're not really serious. Folks, we know they are serious. Any kind of suicidal ideation or gesture is serious, but these things weigh on us. And of course, the fear of what may happen, the fear of a brother, a sister, a son, or a daughter, or person, friend in the family. What's going to happen to them? And therefore, it's very difficult for us to stay grounded. And of course, I know many of you have dealt with this. I've dealt with this as a psychologist, the frustrations of trying to get someone into a psychiatric hospital. You know that story. We don't have beds. Well, we don't really think they're suicidal. Nah, there's nothing wrong with that person. And there you are back again in the emergency room within a few hours. So we know this is complicated. We know this isn't just acting out because we've been through this over and over again, haven't we? Haven't we been in the situation where we see it's not just about the suicidal ideation, it's not just about the gestures, it's not just about the attempts, it's not just something happening on a whim. This is about a comorbidity of a depression or a bipolar disorder or a schizophrenia or substance abuse or some other mental health challenge that becomes overwhelming for our loved ones. We know that quite often people who may have suicidal ideations, who are depressed, a lot of that may be rooted in the trauma. Perhaps it's a physical, emotional, sexual trauma. Perhaps it's being abandoned at a certain age. Perhaps it's something unusual or terrible that has happened to that person. And guess what? We were there. And maybe we were even part of it. And we know, as we heard from John, being part of the LGBTQ plus community, that there are outside pressures, social pressures, that when someone is depressed or they're feeling very alone because they're marginalized, because of prejudice, racism, transphobia, or other prejudices against that individual. And then, of course, we can get away with many things, but we can't get away with genetics. And so we have to understand that not only may this person be experiencing a mental health condition from the life that they're in, but also some of it has been predetermined. And we, because of genetics, sometimes hold ourselves responsible. So I think it's really important in focusing in on that individual who may be suicidal, who is a person in need, that we open our hearts as much as we can. And again, I validate each and every one of you in your frustrations, but it's important to focus on the pain of the individual. We know mental health conditions and suicide, it's not about weakness. It's not about a character disorder. It's not about acting out to ruin someone's day or being selfish. It's not an empty cry for help. It's a genuine cry for help, a genuine sign of hope and despair. Mental illness is painful for us to deal with, but imagine the pain that that individual who's going through it is experiencing. So we have to remember that, because that person is not a pain, but in pain. And we have to be there as much as possible. But there are certain things that we can do to buoy ourselves as family members, as friends, as loved ones, as we go through this struggle with that individual. First and foremost, share your frustrations with your loved one, with your partner. Share that anger, the emotion that you're feeling. Talk about it, the power of catharsis, to be able to share with family members your frustrations and their frustrations. And when that person who is in need is feeling better, you can share with them the frustration that perhaps you experienced because you love them so much. Join support groups. CCA has so many resources that they can share with you. Speak to other family members who perhaps have gone through what you've gone through. Speak to family members outside of your family who have gone through this. And it's not just about a bitching session, excuse me, but it's about empowerment strategies. Take shifts, because we have to work as a team when we're working with someone who may be suicidal or in need. You don't have to be the Lone Ranger coming in. Well, I'll do it myself. I'm the responsible one in the family. I'm the father. I'm the mother. I'm the aunt or uncle. I'll do this. I can do it. No. We work as a supportive team, and we take shifts in taking care of that person. Not only is it the right thing to do, but it's the smart thing to do. Talk to organized groups. Share what we're sharing with you today, because we don't want to be victims. We want to be victors. We want to own what has happened in our lives, to our loved one and to us, so that we can all be there for one another. And never, ever, and we do it all the time, I've done it straight up, try to scapegoat that person who is in need. Oh, why is that person the one who's always asking for help? Folks, there are two words we can never forget, because many of us are clinicians: family dynamics. We all contribute in a way We all must take responsibility in a way for the pain that that individual is in. I know I do it with my own children. We've had our mental health struggles. Did I do enough? Maybe I should have handled it in this particular way. Maybe I can do it better next time. And here's what's even better. I will do it better next time. So it's important as you go through this journey with your loved one, in closing, that you grow your resilience. The resilience to be able to handle these crisis situations without losing your center, because we need for you to be there for that individual, because that individual that you're helping is going to be there for you one day and is going to be there for others. We saw that with John. So self-care is important. Try to get your proper amount of sleep. Try to eat properly. Try to get your exercise and build your spirituality, whatever that may be. Because as we solve each crisis, ladies and gentlemen, it will only make us stronger for the next one, for our loved ones and for ourselves. Because, as you've heard from our MCs, this is not just about the destination. This is truly about the journey, and let's make it a healthy one for us, for our loved ones in need, and certainly for all of us as a society. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jeff. David, I don't know about you. There are so many pieces to that
were.
I could take away. And another great phrase of we don't want to be victims. We want to be victors.
Victors.
I loved that. I loved the idea that he talked about how we could be frustrated and that frustration can turn to shame later. And the family dynamics piece, it's crucial. It goes back to kind of what
Yes.
John was talking about, connection and relationships. And when we talk about relationships, I mean, nothing's stronger than family, really. So,
And some of those relationships can be the hardest ones to reset.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I love the way Dr. Jeff shared his own experience with anxiety beating him down.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so very vulnerable. You often don't hear that so much from the professionals in the field.
No, absolutely. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later, about professionals in the field and healthcare and everything.
That's right, we are. We'll come back to that.
The last thing I'll say that I really appreciate about Dr. Jeff's talk, and that is how we need to be taking care of ourselves.
Yes.
If we're not doing that, we can't be at our best to take care of the people that we care about and that we're concerned about. And I don't think that's a selfish act to say, I need to take care of myself right now. It's almost that, you've probably heard it before, that example of oxygen mask on an airplane. You put it on the little child first and then yourself, because if you're incapacitated, you can't help
I think
anybody
it's
else.
the other way around.
Did I get that wrong? You put it on yourself first.
And then
Yeah.
you choose your favorite child.
Excellent. Nailed it. But yes, the point is still the same. You put it on yourself, because without taking care of yourself,
That's right.
you can't help anyone else. So thank you.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
right. So thank you, Dr. Jeff. That was so touching and so welcome.
Yep.
We appreciated that message.